Chapter 2. Back into the origins. If we look at my whole life from a general perspective, the truth is that it could be said that it has been quite easy. I have had everything. A family that loves me, education. I never went hungry or cold. I could study what I wanted, and I also had a companion that made everything easier for me. However, there was always been something that has not left me calm until today, my grandfather. I felt that I could never say goodbye to him in the way he deserved it. Now, I question myself if this is one of the reasons I feel my life as incomplete as it is right now. My grandfather was a person who worked all his life. He was very poor, and something very special about him is that he was always faithful and very devoted to my grandmother. From the age of 12, they were inseparable. They walked the streets of Bogota and lived life without worries, and so, little by little, they both managed to bring the family forward to what we are today. I always had a special relationship with my grandfather. He was my second dad. He took me to my soccer training sessions. He invited me to his company. He was the one who invited me to go to the movies as a child. He always gave me everything that I was available to him. It was enough to make me happy. He, with my parents, was the one who became what I was the one were the ones to make responsible to become what I am today. But because of destiny, things like my study and that at that moment I preferred more insignificant things than going to see him. There was a long time where we could not see each other, and unfortunately, it was there when he died. Today, there is no day where I don't remember him, and where I don't regret from the bottom of my heart that I didn't spend more time with him. It's something that has haunted me all my life, but it was time to face it, the same way that I was dealing with the other problems of my life. What I just told you was what I was able to think about on my way to my meeting point with Jorge. However, I want you to know that this is not an isolated fact without importance in this story. It is something that later will take great value for me and my future. When I finally reached our meeting point, I got out of the car. For a moment, I felt that all this I was doing was actually a waste of time, and that I will not be able to change my life. The good thing is that feeling did not last much and didn't stop me from going on my way. As soon as I got to the restaurant, I didn't recognize Jorge at the first seat. It was many years without seeing us. He saw me first. He greeted me and I greeted him. The first thing I noticed is that my great friend was not quite right. He had a sloopy beard, this disheveled hair, a slightly dirty shirt, and pants with a tear at the bottom. This left me in shock almost instantly. Jorge had always been characterized by being a neat person in his appearance and in his personality. However, I did not say anything to him. He just arrived from side of those. Maybe he just arrived from some sides of those where he's going that there is no practically civilization. We began to talk calmly. Before telling him everything of what you know, we talked about a little about how these years have been for us. Being honest, I spoke more than him. However, there was one thing that caught my attention. Jorge did not mention his wife even once. It was a person with whom had spent so many years traveling with the world. It seemed strange to me because every time I spoke to him, she was his topic of conversation. He always spoke to me about how well they had and how much they loved each other, but this time he did not mention her not once. We followed the conversation and I told him everything you already know, that I was going through hard times in my life, that despite having everything I felt that I had nothing. Then he told me about then I told him about my family, and from one moment to the next, as if it was ordered to do, Jorge released in tears. I asked him what was happening, and he told me what in reality I would never have thought. Monique, his wife, had died in an accident in one of their adventures together. Instantly, he told me that it had already been 8 months ago, and that he felt it was his fault. She did not want to go that time, but he practically forced her, and from one moment to another, he lost her forever. He told me that he no longer slept well, that he no longer liked to going out, that his life was no longer the same. He even confessed that he thought about committing suicide, but he had not have the strength. He had never seemed like that. He looked relatively good on the outside, but he can feel, but I could feel all his suffering and the remorse that he carries inside. I do not want you to think badly of me. At that moment, I saw an opportunity. I could see that my friend needed help, that he was not well, and well, I also need him. So I thought about asking him without coming words that if we could do one of his adventures to forget everything. He fastly answered me no, and apparently, a little annoyed, he got up from the table and left the restaurant. My chance to save my life and save him was leaving. So, in the same way, I stopped and followed him. I said, Jorge, look at me. I don't want you to be upset, and believe me, I know what you feel. I lost my grandfather without being able to say goodbye. I know what the pain is of feeling that you could have done or stopped doing something, and that everything will have been better. But believe me, it's not like that. When a person has to leave, there is nothing within our limits that allows us to avoid it. Also, as they say in Mexico, dies is who is forgotten. The tears fell from his face. Look at me, my friend. You need to clear your mind, face your fears, and come back to life. You are not happy, Jorge. You are not the happy Jorge that I remember, the one who was always ready to live life as it should be. Also, look at me. I need you. I need you to refine my way, and I'm sure that the only one that can help you in this is you. Unfortunate for me, he said no and left. This was a hard blow for me. I did not know what to do. He was my only hope, and he had left. I decided to return to the hotel. I fell asleep. After a while, more or less 2 hours later, Jorge wrote me telling me that he accepted my proposal. That we meet at the same restaurant in the night. The message was like a second life for me. I was going to do what I wanted so much. I'm search of finding myself again, and at the same time, I was going to help to my friend. I got ready and waited for it to be night. I left the hotel and headed to the restaurant. As soon as I got what I could see was a new man. I could deny it on his face that at that time he was not happy, but at least he had trimmed his beard and had cleaned his clothes. A breakthrough, actually. I asked him what made him change his mind, to which he replied that he knew that if he continued his life as he is being led so far, he would fall into a place of no return, and that terrifies him. I saw him normal, and we got into the car. He had come walking. We just sat down without even letting me light the car, put certain conditions on me that I will have to meet if I really want to travel with him. Number 1, no life-threatening activities. Number 2, no heights. And number 3, never abandon each other for no reason. If I'm being honest, I thought this is actually pretty normal. And he relatively recently lost his wife, and he doesn't want to take any changes, which is understandable. Just when we were going out, Jorge told me that he had forgotten his wallet with the papers in his house. So first we went to pick her up. Barely I was invited to come in. I think it was more courtesy than anything else. As soon as I entered, I was saddened. I could not believe what my eyes were witnessing. I could see rotting food, clothes thrown everywhere. Water on the floor, plus a very strange smell of rotten. I never imagined seeing one of my friends in this state. I decided to be prudent and not to tell him anything. He asked me to help him look for his wallet. After a time searching without success, I decided to check under our clothes, where I found some divorce papers. It was very strange that they were only signed by Monique, but not by him. I kept them fast and kept looking. In the end, Jorge just found his wallet and we went back to the car. I asked him if before the accident everything was okay with his wife, to which with a trembling voice replied that yes, that everything normal. And I must accept that even if I take this, it's strange and it does serious, and I didn't think it was all wrong. We set off to our destinations. I didn't know where we were going or what we wanted to do. As Jorge asked me to drive, I fell asleep. I remember having some rather unpleasant nightmares. I was alone in the forest, walking aimlessly until I began to notice certain voices coming from all directions. I felt an indescribable sensation. It was if they were screaming at me and at the same time whispering. It was like a searing cold. It was very strange. I ran out there. I ran out of there and came to a dark room where I could see myself as an old man, sad and alone without any life in my eyes. I tried to talk to myself, but there was no result. I started to despair and scratched myself until I was bleeding. I saw myself without skin and looked back to my future self, but this time I was dead. For no reason, I felt a tranquility and a calm that I have never felt until I started to fall into an embassy, and just before I hit the ground, I woke up. Jorge had fallen asleep too. We spent the night on the road. The next morning, we woke up and went to the breakfast at a restaurant on the road. It was not the best food I had tasted in my life, but it was acceptable. When we got back up, I asked Jorge where we are filling up. He answered me that we are going to Portugal, a place he knew, where at the same time of knowing places and wonderful people, you can go to a cave of natives that allow you to live experiences that could help you to find your way. This is exciting for me. Everything was going perfectly. I was going on a trip with my best friend, and I was going to know the place that could save my life. For me, nothing could be wrong.